Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to the channel. I'm Cheryl and this is True Crime and Other Stuff. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time to come and watch some of my videos. Today we're going to start from the very beginning of the Long Island serial killer case. First, we're going to start with Shannan Gilbert. She's the one who broke the whole thing wide open with her 911 call. Let's get started with that.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you?
There's somebody after me.
What's the matter? Are you okay?
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do to me? Please stop.
Me, Mike, brother, come on.
No, stop it, please.
That is the voice of Shannan Gilbert calling 911 on May 1st of 2010. She was calling from the gated community of Oak Beach on Long Island in New York. Shannan was a prostitute who visited a client in that neighborhood. That call for help did not save her. Shannan disappeared. The initial search of the area Shannan was calling from did not reveal what happened to Shannan or where she was. But it did uncover something even more shocking: a series of bodies and a potential serial killer. And as more bodies were discovered, the search intensified, and finally, 18 months later, Shannan's body was found. Tonight,
I wonder why it took 18 months to find her when 911 called. They came there. They should have known the area to look at. Come on.
we take a listen to the 911 call made by Shannan, which took 12 years to release, and we try to uncover what happened to Shannan, how she died, and why this case has still not been solved. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. You know, when you grab that cell phone and you dial those three numbers, 911, there is only one reason we do it. We are desperate. We need help. We know things are not right. We're in a situation where we cannot handle it by ourselves. It's dangerous. That's why we call 911. When we need help and we know we're in trouble. Shannan Gilbert made that call to 911. And in that call, which lasted many, many minutes, revealed a lot of information. A lot of information. But for years, no one has heard that 911 call. And the reason we were given for years by investigators was it could harm the investigation. And we hear that line a lot, and I get it. Maybe in the first 24 hours, the first 48 hours, maybe the first year, maybe the first couple.
What investigation? I don't think they were investigating very well.
Years. But when you're talking about more than a decade and you still haven't come up with an answer, we're not harming anything. Because it's clear that investigation is not getting it done. So now, it took a judge's order to get that 911 call released. Shannan Gilbert died that night. And no one's been held responsible. There hasn't been an answer as to what happened. But not only did she die, I mean, there was body after body after body that was all discovered in this area in Long Island, New York. And we're not even close to figuring it out, I don't think. But it took a judge to order it. Then it took like another couple years. And finally, we're starting to learn a little bit more about what happened the night that Shannan Gilbert died. I'm going to play for you some of the most important parts of that call right now. Let's take a listen.
State Police, Trooper Fry. State Police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Okay, where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you, ma'am?
I don't know.
You're driving right now?
No, I'm inside the house.
I'm sorry?
I'm inside the house.
What house?
I don't know. Can you trace where I am?
I'm sorry?
Can you trace where I am?
No, I can't. What's your callback number you're calling from?
Huh?
What phone number are you calling from?
Somebody's after me. Please.
Are you in Suffolk County or Nassau County?
I'm in Long Island.
Where on Long Island are you?
No. No.
Right there, he says, yeah, he wants to talk to you. The guy wants to talk to you. Go ahead, talk to her. Who's he talking about right there?
No. No, stop. No.
Where in Long Island are you? In Suffolk County? Nassau County?
Huh? Why? Why you call me by my name? Why?
County, you on the line?
Stop. Please. Stop it, please. Please stop. Please. Can you shut the door?
No, time to go.
Please. Please. Please.
Go that way, please. Come on, let's go. Come on, we're all going outside. Come on, go outside.
Come on, we'll all go outside. Come on. Going outside, all of us. Who's all of us?
All of us. Come on, we're all going outside. Come on.
No, please.
Come on. Please, come on.
Please.
Come on.
Why?
Just come out here. I'm upstairs. Julie, I'm going upstairs. Julie, I'm going upstairs. Okay? Julie, please. Please, get there. My hold. All right. What's the matter? Are you okay?
What are you going to do? What are you going to do to me? Why?
Huh? Well, I don't know, but it was transferred to me.
Why?
No, no.
Are you going to kill me? Kill me?
She asked, are you going to kill me? And she's talking to Mike right here. No. He said earlier, are you crazy?
Why are you going to
Hey, stop it now.
Come on. You freaking down. Come on.
I'm in the middle of nowhere?
Let's go back to Manhattan. All right? We're in Long Island. We're out near the water.
Please, stop.
It's me, Mike. Brother, come on. Let's get
No, stop it, please.
We're going to play more, but we've got a lot to get to here tonight, this hour, taking a look at what happened to Shannan Gilbert and what happened out there in Gilgo Beach. Joining me now by phone, special guest in New York City, criminal defense attorney, and the attorney who represents Shannan Gilbert's family, John Ray, is back with us. John, thanks so much for joining us.
This guy knows a lot about the case. He represents Shannan Gilbert, and he's been investigating a lot, so he knows a lot.
We really do appreciate your time tonight.
Okay, certainly.
Now, we've been waiting a long time for this stuff to be released. We're learning more, but I need you to start to fill in some of the blanks for me and for everyone watching tonight. Shannan Gilbert calls 911. You call 911 when you need help. She's inside a house. Whose house is she in? Who is she with?
She's in the house of Joseph Brewer, who was a John, and at the time you hear her calling, and right after that, certainly Brewer is in the house, and then her driver, Michael Pack, appears to have come into the house, or else he was already there. And those are the only two we can identify as having been there.
Do you suspect that there were other people there? It's hard to tell in that 911 call. There's voices in the background. There's some mumbling. Do you suspect that there was anyone else inside the house that night?
There were other people there. Whether they were in the house or outside the house is not clear. But Shannan certainly believes that they are in both places. And that's the underlying key to the first part of the calls, that Shannan was acting perfectly rationally. She had a very hard decision to make. She went out of character for a prostitute and called 911 and desperately looked for help because, as she said, somebody was after me. And that somebody couldn't have been Joseph Brewer, because you hear Brewer, he's the John, he's been with her for hours. It would make no sense for her to make that kind of a statement if she was reporting Brewer. And indeed, when you hear Brewer saying that, words to the effect that, I want to talk to you, and she just says no, she doesn't identify him as the culprit who's chasing her. She's worried about somebody who's outside. And you can hear that in the following parts of the tape, certainly. So she has to make what you might say is a Sophie's choice. She has to decide whether to stay in the house where she's pretty certain to be hurt because she said so, or she has to go out into the darkness on the deck and then down into the on the driveway and out into the street in the total darkness. At that time, it's 4:53 when the phone call is first made, and she has to face who's ever out there. Which do you choose to do if you were her? And so you choose 911, makes perfect sense. She doesn't, we don't even know if she's using a throwaway phone, and she doesn't mention her telephone number, but she asks the people there at 911 to identify her so that they could find her. All of that makes perfect sense when you are under the threat of your life. And so when she bolts finally out of the house, which you will hear on that tape, it makes perfect rational sense to have done that. And then you hear the blood-curdling screams. So, that's so far, that takes you through it so far as I see it.
So give me a little more background. What is Brewer and Michael Pack? Michael Pack is the driver she had that brought her from her home out to Long Island?
Yes, Michael Pack is an escort driver. That's what he does. He takes the place of the old-fashioned pimp. And he drives her in her...
He takes the place of the old-fashioned pimp. Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say.
SUV from Manhattan after midnight out to Oak Beach. It is highly unlikely that he, who was very concerned with money, every penny of money, would have taken that trip using the gas all the way out to Suffolk County in the pitch of the night for a small amount of money, and to have made that arrangement all by telephone and trusted.
I remember what I was going to say. Both of these guys have been cleared too by law enforcement, so just wanted to throw that in there.
That he would have been paid. That doesn't make any sense. What does make sense is that this was a prearranged meeting, And the more details than that, we do not know, and the police haven't discovered. So
wait.
what happened is,
Let me follow up on that because I want to make sure I'm following you here. Are you saying a prearranged meeting, something beyond the time she spent with Brewer?
something else was arranged. Certainly Brewer was involved in it, but for Shannan to travel all.
Yeah, I think this guy's right. I think there was probably more than him there, and he's trying to set her up. Yeah, sounds like that's what happened.
All the way out with Pack in that SUV would not ordinarily have occurred unless there was a prearranged meeting and there was a fairly good sum of money involved. Remember that Shannan normally has 2-hour trysts, and this tryst lasted for 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours. So according to Brewer and/or Pack, they claim that she agreed to do extra time once she got out there. That's not likely either, especially because Brewer has claimed publicly a number of times that when Shannan arrived, he didn't want to have anything to do with her because she looked like a man and he wouldn't have any kind of relations with her. He claimed that. That's hogwash. And
That's bullshit. That's a lie. Come on.
So there are lies being told about the whole thing by these people who were involved. And these lies have never been pursued by the police in any capacity. Nonetheless, Brewer is the guy and who allegedly hires her. And when she gets there at some point, she and you won't hear it on the tape, but before the tape, she and Brewer leave the home of Brewer and drive in Brewer's car. We don't know exactly where, but the claim is that they went to go to a CVS to pick up certain items and then bring them back. That's not likely, but that's what is said. But both Pack and Brewer claim that they left with Shannan earlier, and the telephone records we have support that point. And then they came back, Brewer and Shannan, to Brewer.
That's pretty suspicious right there, huh?
Brewer's home. So Shannan shows no fear of Brewer. She goes in his car. She goes in his house. She stays with him for almost 4 hours. He can't be the person who she says she's afraid that somebody is after me. He can't be. It has to be somebody else.
We've got more of the 911 call, and it's finally been released. We're going to play it. John Ray's going to stay with us. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're diving deep into this tonight. Plus, coming up next hour.
Stop.
Where are you?
Mike, stop it. Mike, stop.
What's your name, Shannan?
Huh? Mike, stop. Come here.
Where are you? What's your address? Hello?
You want me to call the police?
Yeah, hold on, then I know you're telling the truth. What's the address?
What are we going to talk?
Hello, again. Mike, stop it. You guys are planning something.
That's Shannan Gilbert calling 911 back in 2010. She died that night. This case has never been resolved or solved. The answers are not there, just not there. But it's taken 12 years just to get the 911 calls released at this point, because there's a lot that just doesn't smell right about this case and this investigation. She was working as a prostitute that night, went to a John's house in Long Island, went all the way from Manhattan out to Long Island. And then she made this call, and then she was never seen or heard from again until they found her body 18 months later. John Ray is still with us. He's representing the family of Shannan Gilbert. First question, John. I know you've done such an amazing job in pursuing this relentlessly on behalf of the family, but that family has suffered a lot of tragedy. Does Shannan have any family left that is waiting for an answer here?
Yes, Shannon's sisters, Cherie and Stevie, they still are alive. Her sister Sarah is alive, but she is incarcerated in a mental facility. And she, as you know, she slew her mother, Mary Gilbert, Shannon's mother as well, and partly because she had lost her mind due to Shannon's death. So there's many more. There's two other deaths involved in this case in that respect, ironically and sadly.
Taking such a toll on the family. As we listen to that 911 call, I heard some laughter at one point in the background.
Right.
She's saying, these people are trying to kill me.
Right.
It's a gated community, right? So is there any record kept of who comes in and who comes out? Have all the people from that community behind the gate been interviewed? What are your thoughts there?
There were cameras, security cameras, at least two of them at the booth in the entranceway to the community. And those cameras were on, working that night. When she came and whoever left, they would have filmed. These cameras were in the charge of Dr. Peter Hackett, who's one of the people who lived in Oak Beach at the time. And he was also an officer in the association board. He caused the tapes to be erased so that the police never got them. Police didn't even come for them until some 18 days after Shannon's disappearance. And in that time, they were all erased. There were several community members directly involved in this case and involved in seeing Shannon, and nonetheless, they were ignored by the police. The police did a very light touch investigation, and to this day, that's the way it's been.
Now, the other part of this story that grabbed even more headlines were the fact that once they started searching for Shannan, they discovered body after body after body. I want to play a little bit of Geraldine Hart, Suffolk County Police Commissioner, talking about those other bodies that were discovered and how it relates or doesn't relate to what happened to Shannan. Let's listen.
Are you changing your position now on whether or not Shannan Gilbert may have been victim of this killing spree?
So we've constantly said, and I can tell you at least for the time that I've been involved with this investigation since 2015, that she does not match the pattern of the Gilgo Beach homicides. But again, I want to emphasize to everybody here, we let the facts dictate where we're going to go with this investigation. It's very dangerous to speculate or come to conclusions before all the investigation is completed and the evidence is reviewed.
All right, John, I'm interested in your thoughts on all the other bodies that were found as they were searching for Shannan and ones they found subsequent to that as well. Do you see a connection here?
There's indubitably a connection amongst all of them. It's almost impossible to imagine rationally that they're not connected. Several of the bodies, the body parts or their trunks, as depending on the person, are found in Manorville, which is a wooded area further out in Long Island, and their other parts are found along Oak Beach, along Ocean Parkway from Oak Beach to Gilgo Beach.
What he says here is really important, so listen to this part.
All the way down to Nassau County, the next county over. And there was a baby found who was matched up with a mother who was found miles away along the same strip. And there was also an Asian male, cross-dressing allegedly, Asian male found as well along that strip. They all have similar patterns. The throat seems to have been the focus of whoever did the killing. In Shannan's case, she too was like the others that they could identify. She was a sex worker, and her throat appears to have been damaged as well. She had a bone that's known as the hyoid bone in her throat. Everybody has one of those. It's the only bone that's not connected to any other bone in the body. It's very difficult to reach. Shannan's hyoid bone was snapped at both ends. It's a U-shaped bone, small, and it had a hole virtually drilled right through the middle of the bone. That the snapping of the bone is indicative of a homicide. Some of the other women who were found were also found having been either strangulated or suffocated. One of them we know was suffocated with her underwear having been stuffed down her throat. So there are commonalities in all of these things, and the dismemberment of some of them is common from one to the other. They stretch out in terms of their disappearance over years. But they're all found. In fact, 4 of them are found in tandem with burlap, either taut. It looks like burlap was placed over them in the spots where they were found along Ocean Parkway. So they're related for sure. They're all related, and there's very likely more than one person involved in these killings.
Wow. Did you hear that? He thinks there's more than one person involved in these killings. Wow. Okay.
It's unbelievable to hear the investigators saying there's no connection here. There's no commonality between this sex worker's death and the death of the other ones who are all lined up along the strip there in Gilgo. I mean, it's mind-boggling to even say that.
Well, you say so because you're an objective observer, but if you listen to the police department from the get-go on this case, a police department that was thoroughly sexually and otherwise corrupted from the top down, from their police chief down.
And we'll also talk about that later, too. We'll get into that probably another time. So stay tuned.
He having spent time in jail and having solicited prostitutes on his journey through the police. You take their word. They want you to believe the absurd. They want you to believe that of 11 people, of whom most of them were identifiable as sex workers, and the others weren't identifiable one way or the other. You're supposed to believe that they're all lined up on the same narrow strip of Parkway along a waterfront, and all of them in the same work, all of them with very similar patterns of dismemberment and throat injuries, all of them, including Shannan Gilbert, in the marsh on one side or the other of the Parkway. And you're supposed to believe, according to the police, that with all of what you heard on that tape so far, and with some of the other facts that we have that certainly implicate murder, that somehow Shannan Gilbert just happens to be a coincidence and has nothing to do with the others, and wandered into the marsh and killed herself there by some accidental means and laid face up on top of a bush where they found her remains later on, and she died of a tragic accident. If you listen to the police department as we speak, that is their story. That is a lie. That is a corrupted story. They are covering up for something very deep and serious.
Thanks for saying that, because I never, ever believed that she just walked out in the marsh and died somehow, all by herself, accidentally, somehow.
And there's no doubt about that anymore. There was always a doubt about it for years when they wouldn't release the tapes, but when I went to court and finally forced them to release the tapes, now they spun their story out, and this is their latest story. This is a police department of homicide investigators, some of the supposed to be the best professionals in this country, but certainly the highest paid. And these homicide people are supposed to rely upon evidence. They themselves admit they have no evidence whatsoever that Shannan Gilbert died by accident, yet that is the spin they want you to believe. They massage the evidence into basically a false stance, and thereby try to convince the public of the utterly absurd that this girl died by accident instead of by homicide.
Yeah, because that would disconnect her from all the other bodies that are there, and all of a sudden make it completely different. All right, we're going to take a short break. We've got more to get to, more of the 911 call. We'll bring in some.
Shannan.
Shannan Gilbert called 911. She needed help. You heard her scream. She didn't survive that night. It was 12 years ago in 2010. Finally, the 911 call has been released. We're talking about it tonight. Let's bring in our guest still with us, the attorney who represents Shannan Gilbert's family, John Ray, is with us. Joining us now in New York City, private investigator, founder of Black Ops Private Investigators, former New York City police officer Manuel Gomez is with us. Also in New York, former New York City Assistant Commissioner, former NYPD Sergeant Special Assignment, Dr. Keith Taylor. And in Jacksonville, Alabama, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, former senior investigator for the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office, and the host of the Body Bags podcast. Please check it out. Please download it. Joseph Scott Morgan is with us. John Ray, what we just heard, that screaming, the running, she's outside. It seems like she is accusing Pac, her driver, of being part of whatever happened that night.
Yes, she is. She tells him, or she says to him sarcastically, "Are you part of this?" or words to that effect. And he leaves, or apparently goes outside. And then when she bolts and runs outside, you hear those blood-curdling screams, but you don't know who caused it. And then she continues to run. The police spin that story incorrectly on purpose. They put on a false light on that whole story, because what she does is she runs until she knocks on the door of a fellow named Gus Coletti, an older man, and he does not let her in. He does not say anything to her except a few sarcastic comments, and she says nothing to him whatsoever, and then bolts and disappears again until she knocks on another woman's door, Mrs. Brennan. But during that time, the police have now spun that story to say that Coletti invited her in to his house, that she went into his house and bolted irrationally, when none of that happened and none of that's on the tape. They're lying about what happened. But what you do know happened is what you heard, is that somebody assaulted her and she escaped. And she did exactly what would be rational. She bolted for her life. So there's so much more to this case, and there's so many more pieces of evidence that the police refuse to investigate, and it's a willful refusal.
Joseph Scott Morgan, I wanted to put up on the screen for you part of the report from Dr. Michael Bodden, who did an independent evaluation of what happened to Shannan Gilbert. And this is what he found. Almost all of the skeletal bones were recovered and appeared normal. There was not evidence of trauma. However, the larynx was missing, and only the body of the hyoid bone was found. The two greater horns of that neck bone were missing. These structures, the larynx and the hyoid bone, are often fractured during homicidal manual strangulation. My examination of the recovered body of the hyoid bone after it had been anthropologically defleshed showed a roughness at the margins where the separated horns had been attached. It is my opinion, based on the circumstances of Shannan's death and the materials I've reviewed, that there's no evidence that she died of a natural disease, of a drug overdose, or of a drowning. There's insufficient information to determine a definite cause of death, but the autopsy findings are consistent with homicidal strangulation. What are your thoughts tonight?
Yeah, isn't this fascinating? You know, you've got Suffolk that's saying that, you know, they've apparently opined that this was a drug overdose, and oh, by the way, she drowned as well. Well, what are you basing that upon? We're talking about skeletal remains. How'd you draw toxicology to make that conclusion? Maybe she had some kind of history of drug usage in the past. And while we're talking about it, how'd you come to the conclusion that she drowned? Did you examine her lungs? No, I forgot. There are no lungs. She was skeletonized. Did you examine her inner ear? No, because there's not going to be anything there. That's one of the things we look for in drowning. But what Dr. Bodden did conclude is that after he finally got his hands on the hyoid, remember, they've already examined this. They talked about the defleshing. That's one of the things that the anthropologist does. He finally got his hands on the hyoid and was able to examine it. And interestingly enough, the horns were missing. And as counsel had mentioned earlier, bone, the hyoid bone, is the only non-articulated bone in the body. It simply is there to anchor the tongue then. And this sits way, way high up in the neck. That's why you always talk about with manual strangulations, one of the things that people look for in my field in medical legal death investigation, has someone C-clamped this person? Have they throttled them so high up in the neck that they're going to pop this bone, they're going to crack it? And apparently Dr. Bodden is opining that after he's seen this defleshed hyoid bone.
Manuel Gomez, private investigator. Your thoughts about the police department out there? There's been a lot of skepticism about them. Some of the folks have gotten into a lot of trouble out there. What happened here? What happened? Why can't this thing be solved? Why is the investigation gone the way it's gone?
Well, it could have been solved if they wouldn't have dropped one major ball in this case. And one of that was all 5 of these women had online aliases, and they were being sex trafficked online. Like, for example, Babylon Escorts, where they sell women and they advertise the prices. All of them were doing this. All of them had the same John Doe initiating contact with them, trying to hook up with them. The police department failed to subpoena these internet services, these escort sex trafficking services that would have showed the connection that all these women had the same guy reaching out to them, or the same men. Unfortunately, they dropped the ball on this. And I know this personally because, like I said, I have done numerous cases in Long Island for sex trafficking, and these sites are still up. And one of them, you can go on now, it's Babylon Escorts. They not only sell the women, but they star rate them. It's insanity. And this is, it's a shame because, you know, this girl was on the call for 22 minutes with 911. She was asking for help. Now listen, anybody knows Gilgo Beach and Long Island, that area, a cop call could have responded within that time frame. The fact that the ball was dropped on so many levels, and the fact that they did not subpoena, and to this day still haven't subpoenaed the internet sites that all 5 of these women were on. And the sad thing is that the records stay on these sites between 6 and 8 years. The ghost image stays on their hard drive up to 10 years. That evidence is still there and it has not been researched, and it is a shame.
Dr. Keith Taylor, your thoughts about what's going on here with the investigation, because that's the other part of the story. I mean, if it's not for John Ray, this thing just gets swept under the rug and oh, it's just another prostitute. Nobody cares. And it just doesn't seem like there was enough effort or some level of perhaps not wanting to find out the truth here.
Well, I think what you see in terms of having a multi-agency task force that includes the FBI and the sheriff's office and the police department and others, the fact that the department is now dedicating these significant resources to gain more information and utilizing social media, dedicating a website just to this case. Speaks to the significance of the past problems with the case, and so there were a myriad number of problems both with the police department and the decisions that they made in terms of not including the FBI until later in the investigation. But I think that the one thing that may be helpful is the fact that they are continuing this effort to try and reinvigorate this investigation.
All right, our guests are staying with us. We've got more to get to, plus still coming up next hour, we've got more for you on the Murdoch murder case down in South Carolina. Don't go away. Let's bring back in our guests, John Ray, Manuel Gomez, Dr. Keith Taylor, Joseph Scott Morgan with us. John, let me ask you, anyone associated with this investigation or from the neighborhood or anywhere else have those initials, HM or WH?
Yes, and we've identified at least 2 people who share those initials to the police. They've not interviewed the persons who have those initials and have been high-profile suspects in this case before. And the police have refused to interview them. Instead, they held press conferences, 2 of them so far, in which they announced facilely that they have all these other people like the FBI and so on actively working on this. That's not true. Nobody has been interviewed in the Oak Beach community since they claimed that they were having this investigation. They wrote off Shannan Gilbert as a tragic accident with no evidence whatsoever. And you'll notice at both press conferences, the key person was missing, and that was the district attorney of Suffolk County. He did not participate in that. I don't think we're being treated in good faith here. I do think there's a serious cover-up, and I never used to say that until recently when I've seen some of these developments. There is a police cover-up here, and it needs to be broken.
Joseph Scott Morgan, if you've got a belt, you've got initials, you've got a lead. Can you get any forensics off that belt? And isn't the most important thing to talk to someone who has the initials HM or WH?
Yeah, you would think that you would begin to narrow things down, and also looking perhaps at the histrionics, associated with about the point of origin. I think from a forensic standpoint, from whence was this belt created? Was it at a shop? Is it a custom belt? Is it something that is unique to that particular area? Or is it something that can be purchased anywhere and perhaps had the letters placed upon it at a later date? Was it something that was specifically...
Well, we now know that they have a suspect for the Gilgo 4, Rex Huerman. But we're starting from the beginning. We're going to go through all of this. The next video is going to be about the corrupt law enforcement, and then we're going to get into the victims, and then we'll go into the suspect and follow that. All right. Thanks for watching my video, and have a really blessed day. And we're going to talk more about the Long Island serial killer, also known as the Gilgo Beach killer. So I'm wondering, do you all think that Shannan Gilbert's connected to the other ones, or what do y'all think? That's what I want to know. Oh my goodness. All right. Thanks for watching my videos. Thanks for being here. And have a really blessed evening. Thank you.